Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Aero League Racing. My name's Aman, and today I will be doing commentary once again for you here today. We're tuning into Tier 3. Hello, Saeed. Thank you for tuning in as usual. Today we're going to be going down to the land down under, Australia. It's great to have this track back on this calendar, honestly. I feel like it's been way too long since we've gone racing over here. But yes, just a little bit longer, and I think we will be getting started soon. So until then, everybody just relax, get yourself a drink, something nice to eat. Just relax, sit back, and hopefully we should be in store for what is to be a great race today. Right then, a few more minutes before I think everybody else joins up. I think there's only a few people left who we are waiting for. Until then, let's get an update on the standings, shall we? So, current championship leader is Groen, sitting at 41 points in the Ferrari. Benny, unfortunately, as of today, had an incident, and I believe he hurt his leg or broke his leg, and will most likely be missing at least, if not the whole, but a major part of the rest of the season. He was sitting in P2 with 40 points. P3, Owen in the McLaren, sitting at 24. Then we have CRF in the Ferrari, Ross in the Haas, Tichy in the Aston Martin, Reaper in the Haas, who will also not be racing today, Luke in the Alfa Romeo, and Pointers in the Williams, and that would round off your top 10 in the driver standings. Looking at the constructor standings at the moment, Ferrari sit at the top of the table with 59 points. AlphaTauri follow closely behind with 40, Williams with 25, Haas with 24. McLaren with, I believe, 29. Oh, never mind. I guess I would put McLaren in P3. Aston Martin with 10 points. Alfa Romeo sitting comfortably with 8 points in 7th place. Red Bull Racing sitting in 6th with P6, in 8th with 6 points. Mercedes with 2 points, and Alpine at the bottom of the grid. So that shapes up our constructor standings as well. Now, obviously, we have a few things to look forward to this race. Now, Benny, obviously not the main championship fighter with Groen, not going to be probably racing for the rest of the season. It'll be interesting to see if any other driver decides to step it up and maybe fight for that championship, or if Groen can maintain his consistent form, then we may be looking at a pretty clear-cut winner for the rest of the season. However, as we saw with Brazil, so much can happen. It was a completely chaotic race, and I'm looking forward to something very similar here. And I believe it should just be a few minutes longer before we should get everyone underway. You can tell Major is very eager to get things started with his repeated spamming of the X button. But regardless, I think a few more minutes left to go. Or maybe one or two more drivers, I believe. And Ross should give us the go-ahead, and we shall get all underway. Until then, I hope you all are having a wonderful day. I know I am. I'm very excited to watch this race. And yeah, let's just give it a few more minutes and see what happens. Owen says it's time for the ice skating rink. Yeah, I've heard that the track's a lot more slipperier this time around, so I obviously haven't really been racing on this track. I haven't been playing the game at all recently, but from what I've heard, it's quite a cluster. Well, for lack of better words, it's just a mess actually. To catch myself out there, but yeah, I've heard it's a complete mess, no grip whatsoever. It'd be interesting to see how these strategies that people have employed would help them out. Some people may be opting to go for a higher downforce setup to stick to the track, however, obviously would be compromising majorly on top speeds. And with the new revamped circuit, there is a lot more overtaking possibilities with longer straights and longer flat out sections on this track. So let's see how drivers react and then how and who has the better strategy. We'll see that, I think, pretty clearly in qualifying as well. But if you guys do have any more information about this track, then please let me know. I'm all ears to hear about it. Owen saying, well, I hope I have the best strategy, but I think it's probably the same as everyone else's. Yeah, but that can always change mid-race as well, obviously with the inclusion and, lack of sometimes safety cars, normal incidents, wing damage. There's so many factors to take into play here, which I guess whenever you go racing online anyways, you come in with a strategy obviously for the best case scenario, but more often than not, sometimes it doesn't work out for you that way. And with that, Ross has given us the heads up that we are all set to go here at Melbourne. So as we wait for the drivers to line up, we will be, well, we've already run through the standings anyway, so I guess we have nothing more than to than for some good racing to look forward to. Best of luck in your race as well, Owen. I hope everything goes according to your plans as well. Have a good one, Owen. If it rains, I won't watch since MB will bin it. I can't blame you. Is there a high possibility for rain here in Australia? I didn't take it for one of the circuits that would have really too much rain. I know Brazil obviously would definitely be expecting some rain there, but I don't know. It has poured in Australia before. I'm not too sure how many drivers have done their practice around here, but well, I guess it'll separate some of the good drivers from the better drivers. Saying that no, because obviously nobody's bad, but I'm sure you all understand what I meant. Right, 3, 2, 1, and we are almost underway here for qualifying here at Melbourne. We'll be keeping an eye out to see who goes out first, and before anyone actually gets really started, I'll turn on some of the lap data so we can have a good understanding of what everyone is doing and where they are. Yeah, that seems, telemetry, no, detail, we don't need that yet, so we'll just turn that off for now. No? Okay. Right, let's see who is going to be going out first here at Melbourne. So far, clear skies. Doesn't look like it's going to rain anytime soon. I see a car going out, and that is the Alpine of FXN Parker. He's going to be the first one out on the grid today, so we'll be riding on board with him. FXN Parker obviously getting involved in a few incidents in the last race. We'll be looking for a more cleaner race this time around. We've got both the Ferraris coming out next with Groen ahead, followed by CRF. And we've got I believe the AlphaTauri of Mighty Chump. So, however, our main attention will be on the first runner on this track today, which is, of course, the Alpine. So let's just keep an eye out on him, see how he's going to be doing. And this is what we'll have to see. This is also one of the new revamped circuits. Actually, let me go into a driver who's actually going through it right now. So obviously, in this part of the section, you'd have a chicane usually that would come up, but not in this scenario. Now it's just a full fast right-hander followed by a fast left-hander as well. So that is one of the major changes that we'll be seeing here on this circuit. Interesting to see how drivers will be adjusting their setups regarding this as well. Probably going for a more higher top speed to make some overtakes around there. Obviously not a DRS zone, so drivers will have to purely be relying on their setups and of course the slipstreams. But riding on board with FXN Parker, DRS wide open as he begins the first time lap here at Melbourne. We'll keep an eye out and see how he does. Coming across the first chicane, massively cuts across it and massively cuts across the second one as well, showing no mercy. So there's no point spectating him. We'll ride on board with Groen in the Ferrari, who will hopefully become set the actual first time lap here at Melbourne. First chicane goes relatively well, right on the edge. I'm riding those curves very well, as we can see the Williams getting out of the way, not to impede traffic. Right down the second DRS zone and entering the second chicane. Very, very odd one, this one, because it actually is a lot longer than you think, and those curves are very dangerous as well. So far, keeping it right on the edge. Groen seems to be setting a very, very nice time. His teammate in the Ferrari, CRF, meanwhile, not too closely behind, maybe thinking that there's not too much of slipstream advantage over here. However, he seems to be doing relatively well for himself, obviously setting the first lap time. We can't expect anything major. And according to our telemetry sheets, Major has actually set, O'Leary's actually set, no, never mind, everyone's setting the fastest first sector. You see over here, Groen now coming across one of the final chicanes, a very, very slow left and right-hander. Very easy to unsettle the car here as well and go off into that curves if you barely miss your braking point. And obviously this fast right-hander is also an easy place to misplace the car. However, he keeps it steady. DRS wide opens and comes across the line, finishes with a 119.2. CRF, his teammate, would be looking to finish closely behind as well, so that's a 119.6. So not bad from these drivers. I believe it was the Aston Martin of Mighty Chump who's also invalidated his lap time. Won't be setting any relatively quick times yet. Owen goes P4 with Major going P3 and O'Leary going P3. Both the Red Bull drivers hoping to bounce back after what has been a rather upsetting first two races. We ride on board with Victor, who's also in the Alpha Tauri, trying to finish his run, maybe do something that his teammate could not, which would be setting a valid lap time. Coming across the final turn, he's managed to keep it relatively clean so far. Looks to be setting a competitive lap time. We'll have to see. Gets a slipstream advantage from the car ahead as well. Oh, and we can see the Alpine slipped in the back there, as the Naked Champ actually sets the fastest lap of the race. I unfortunately missed that. It goes for a 1:18.5, being the first car to enter the 1:18s. It's a very, very fast lap time over there. We can ride on board with Abmo as well, who's coming across his final two turns. Oh, never mind, goes into the pits. I'm guessing he did not want to finish that line, as the Williams of Pointers gets very slippery through there. Pointers coming across the line. Where will he go? Finishes P10. Not the fastest time. Mighty Chump, meanwhile, has spun out once again. MBMA, a person that we thought would be a very, very good contender for the major part of this season, has not had a great second race. I don't think he's on a faster run, and now it shows that he's invalidated. Noof Squid, meanwhile, setting his first lap time here at Australia. And Mighty Chump actually gets disqualified from the session for parking in a dangerous location. We saw that he had spun out. I didn't think it was a dangerous location, but apparently that was enough for the game to kick him out, which is very unfortunate, as he will be starting from the back of the grid. Meanwhile, Noof Squid in the Mercedes. Obviously Mercedes not really in a prominent location in the standings. Will be wanting to push themselves further up the grid to give themselves a better run for the title. Or if not for the title, then they'd at least be wanting to fight for a better position than they are in now. DRS wide open. You can see his ERS light flashing, meaning he definitely did not have enough to set a majorly fast time, as he sets a 120.0. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, the first few runs here at Melbourne are complete. Right now, for provisional pole position, we are looking at the Naked Champ, who is sitting with a 1:18.5. Groen in P2 in the Ferrari, setting a 1:19.2, and his teammate CRF setting a 1:19.6. Once again, the Naked Champ obviously being the only car at the moment to go into the 1:18s. Looks very strong here, as a matter of fact, almost 7/10 ahead of P2. I believe MBMA may be going for a second run. I'm sorry if my notifications are on. I will be turning those off so those don't interrupt. Yes, I'm right on board with him, but I'm not too sure if this is exactly a timed run. We'll have to see if he darts into the pits or not. So far, it looks to be on a good record. Yep, he goes. He's setting a lap time. So MBMA, a driver to look out for at the start of the season, now coming across the line. Let's see what time he will be setting. Sets a 1:18.5, becoming the second car to enter into the 1:18s, and as a matter of fact, only 500ths behind P2. So MBMA definitely trying to make a statement and trying to set himself up in a very, very nice position. And now we can ride on board with FX and Parker, who seems to be setting his lap time as well. Currently sitting in P7 with a 1:19.8. And we can see the Ferrari of Groen now coming out, realizing that he's definitely going to need to improve if he doesn't want to drop down further. A lot of the drivers actually, oh man, I've completely forgotten. Actually, you know what? I will check it right now. Somebody in the tier 3 chat who was giving us a prediction here. Let me just find it real quick. You can see FX and Parker actually goes back into the pit, so nothing doing for him yet. We'll ride on board with Groen, see what he can do. Whoa, car gets very, very out of hand over there. Not too sure what happened. As long as he's mainly maintained the car under control, then that's what's important. Groen currently not setting I don't think he's setting a lap time yet. He's just actually letting his teammate through, CRF, who is, I believe, on a lap time. I wish this the timing bug over here in the top right would change. He's currently 0.3 faster. So definitely some time to be found there. CRF definitely trying to make a push for going against MBMA and the Naked Champ. Keep an eye on him as Owen now interrupts the Ferraris and goes into P3 with a 1:19.1. So still MBMA and the Naked Champ being the only drivers in the 1:18s, let alone 0.5 in it, but CRF may be trying to change that as well. I'm not too sure if this will be too rapid of a time because the timing sheet may be lying to us, but actually no, sets a 1:18.7, so becomes the third car to now enter the 1:18s. And now we can see that drivers are beginning to enter this very, very sacred number. Ross in the Haas managed to set a 1:19.0, barely missing out. So you know that he's definitely going to be looking to improve. O'Leary in the Red Bull, meanwhile, 0.2 up on his time, goes very, very squarely through that corner. That's what I was talking about. If you ride that curve dangerously enough, you will lose a lot of time. Meanwhile, O'Leary, unfortunately, because of that mistake, cost him a bunch of time. He does not improve. Well, he does, but very minutely, not enough to really gain too many positions. Meanwhile, Groen a 10th up on his time as well. Will be looking to move himself up a position. It will rain for 30 minutes, so you can count MB as last in the race. Clearly my goat. That's sad, man. I wish MB would just learn to drive in the rain. I hope he can keep up the performance he's been going at. And as Groen's Ferrari spins out. I'm not too sure. No, he hasn't retired from the session. However, that mistake there, costing him dearly, was on a very, very good lap time to probably enter the 1:18s. However, that mistake will hurt him. We'll go right on board with Tichy in the Aston Martin, who's currently sitting in P8. Has an Alpine following him very closely behind as well. Oh, never mind. And he goes onto the grass as well. So drivers repeatedly going onto the grass today. see the Naked Champ beginning his first, actually does not really set too much of a fast lap time. So a bunch of drivers now coming back into the pits as we ride on board with the AlphaTauri. We got a yellow flag in Sector 1. That might be the Mercedes over there. You can see. Comes into the pits. So no runs completed for him. Let's go right on board with Pointers, who seems to be making his timing runs as well. And comes back into the pits. So most drivers now opting to come back into the pits, feeling like they can't improve too much. Naked Champ, meanwhile, on the other hand, going on his slow run. MBMA, on the other hand, we're on board with him, and as he finishes the first sector, we'll keep an eye on his sheet. Sets a purple sector 1/10 currently up on his time. So if he keeps up this pace, he will definitely be overtaking the Naked Champ and taking provisional pole. Do right on board with him. Let's ride on board and see how he goes through this chicane. Definitely a bit more careful as it is. Ross actually retiring from the session. Why? He was in the pits, wasn't he? And there was a good chance he could have improved and maybe moved himself further up, but maybe Ross feeling like there's not much he can do. Regardless, MBMA trying to set up as much of a lead to P1 as possible so he can secure pole position. Comes across the line. Well, let's see what he sets. Sets a 1:18.1. 4/10 faster than P2 at the moment and takes provisional pole position. And with that, MBMA will definitely have made a statement, and a few drivers will be looking at that timing sheet wondering how will they keep up. Owen going on a very, very slow lap. Actually, will probably be beginning his time lap. We'll ride on board with him. Owen in the McLaren currently sitting in P5. A few drivers now beginning their out laps as well. We can see Groen, Vitor? I'll just call him Bonk. Groen, Bonk, and Tichy all currently sitting side by side with each other. Groen actually beginning his time lap. No, he hasn't. Then why is it saying that he's not on his out lap anymore? Regardless, Owen meanwhile 7/10 up on his time. Only through Sector 1 as well. Oh, never mind. 2/10 up on his time. Ross is saving tires? Okay. I mean, that's not a bad option, but when you're still sitting in the 119s and provisional pole is currently on a 118.1, I'm all for saving tires so you have more strategy available mid-race, because that is where the points matter. However, I don't know, I feel like he should have definitely tried for one or two more run, at least one more run, to maybe secure himself a better starting position. However, if that's what he feels all he needs, then he knows his racecraft better than I would. Meanwhile, Owen, setting a relatively nice lap time, may not be fighting for pole position, however, will be definitely looking to move himself up the grid. DRS wide open, and as Owen crosses the line, he sets a 1:18.9, so moves himself up into P4 and demoting Ross into P5. We're right on board with Groen as well, who in the Ferrari, who's currently... I don't trust that information in the top right hand side of the screen. I'd rather just see how he does, actually. Let's see if we can get a sneak peek. No, we cannot. His Noof Squid has joined back into the session. Groen trying to keep up with his Ferrari teammate. Both these Ferrari drivers have been on a roll lately, especially Groen, who I believe has finished on the podium 2 of 2 times. DRS wide open. Will he make an impact? Sets a 1:18.4, so still 3/10 behind his teammate. However, does move himself up into P4 position. Bonk in the other hand in the AlphaTauri was the other driver we saw that was on an out lap. Will be interesting to see if he can make any dents or make any changes. You can see the top 3 are now currently in the pits. Well, the 1:40 left, and it's only a few minutes left here in qualifying at Melbourne, so they're gonna have to be quick a bit if they want to make it for another run, as MBMA does. And we can see Vitor or Bonk actually moved himself up into P5. And a bunch of drivers now beginning their final runs here. So Tichy currently beginning his timed run as well. Bunch of drivers on their out lap, as we can see the Naked Champ and MBMA. Not too far apart from each other. Vitor, an ex-teammate of mine, he won Constructor's title. Okay. So then we have an ex-champion of sorts here as well. I hope he's going to be able to make an improvement as well. Coming across the second sector. Let's see how fast he's going. Actually 6/10 down on his time at the moment. He has no ERS by the looks of it. I'm not too sure if he's just trying to, or maybe he's just set his lap and that's it. Right. Looking down a bit of rest. Oh, there was a driver out on the grass? Oh, and that's the Cunning Fern. MBMA and the Naked Champ about to begin their time lapse as well. We got to keep an eye on them. Trems, meanwhile, on the other hand, sitting at the back of the grid with no time set as of yet. We'll be wanting to change that. Not too sure what's been happening to him this session. Currently sets a 27.0. However, while he sets his lap time, I do want to keep my eye for the major part of this session on the Naked Champ and MBMA, as both the drivers fighting for pole position, as CRF, Groen, Bonk, and Owen choosing to stay into the pits. And as time has elapsed here at Melbourne, we'll be now looking at the final runners. As we can see, as the Naked Champ has actually spun out. So it will be probably no contention from his end against MBMA. MBMA currently going to set the fastest lap time of the race. How's Abmo doing? Let's take a look, shall we? Abmo about to finish his lap time as well, actually. Has not set a lap time as of yet, however. That could change. Abmo's obviously been on a good string of results lately, getting consistent points. Comes across the line, sets a 1:19.9, goes P14. Meanwhile, MBMA, even though his lap time is, there's really no point, since I don't think any other driver is really going to be fighting for it. FXN Parker and Major, who are currently sitting P11 and P12, not really going to set an input, and MBMA decides to go into the pits, thinking better of it, and as we go back onto FXN Parker, he spins out. Meanwhile, Major, will he be finishing his lap time? Obviously, his rear end looks very, very unstable. Does not bend it into the wall, however. DRS wide open, and I'm not too sure if this is really going to be a great time. Yeah, 1:27.7. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, qualifying here at Melbourne is now complete. MBMA secures pole position. Meanwhile, the Naked Champ getting P2. MBMA obviously setting a 1:18.1. Naked Champ setting a 1:18.5. And CRF in the Ferrari will be taking P3 with a 1:18.7. So a few things to look forward to. A few change-ups in the grid. MBMA, after securing his, I believe, second pole position here in Tier 3 for this season. So congratulations to him, becoming the first driver to set 2 pole positions this season so far. And after his result at Brazil, he will be looking to bounce back as well. Benny, obviously, in the championship, not really racing for us anymore. We wish him nothing but the best and hope for a speedy recovery. Looking down the rest of the grid, we can see a few different other positions. Ross, obviously retiring early on, now going to be starting P8. Looking a bit down, Abmo P14, Major P12, FXN Parker P11, and Mighty Chump starting at the back of the grid because of a disqualification. A few more minutes before we get started here. Safety car predictions. How many are we thinking? If I had to make a guess, see, it's so hard to make an assumption because Imola had none. Brazil had like 3 or 4. I'm not entirely too sure. I can just call you Parker. Okay. Well, Parker, thank you for the clarification. It'll just make my life easier instead of FXM Parker. Reaper says 4 safety cars. Oh man, seeing as we're starting off in the rain, I would not be surprised. Italiano would be fuming. Seeing as how MBMA will probably struggle in the rain. However, you never know, drivers all around the grid might struggle in the rain, so it's hard to really say. 8 seconds before we get started. Oh, well, 3 or 2 now. And we can see MBMA will be leading the formation lap here. We'll get an estimate of it. So all drivers, I believe, going to be starting off on the wet. So we can see the predicted pit stop strategy there. Lap 14 to 19 is the expected pit window. So we go on to tires, and yep, every single driver from P1 to P18 opting to start on the wets. How that will pan out going into the race, we will have to see as the conditions change. However, as of now, wets definitely seem to be on the valid option as the Naked Champ disqualifies himself from the formation lap. Reaper says 4, especially with the rain. Yeah, with safety cars, with the rain and how slippery drivers have been saying Australia is going to be, I think 4, yeah, I'd probably say around 3 or 4 as well. However, Tier 3 has surprised us here before. Or, well, not here, but has surprised us before. Imola obviously going completely safety car-less, giving us non-stop action. So, let's see how drivers will perform under these conditions. You can just hear these cars revving their engines, trying to get back. All our drivers trying to understand the track as well in these conditions. Not many of these drivers actually got a chance to practice in the rain. So for a lot of them, they'll be Bambi on ice. They won't have any grip. But that's what it takes to become a good driver and to win a championship as well. It's that you need to be able to adapt to situations, and as a driver, you should be ready for every sort of situation as well. It doesn't hurt to maybe take out of, like, if you're practicing for hours, then maybe taking a few minutes off to just practice in the rain. Maybe have a setup there just in case. Alright, and as MBMA now comes across the final 2 corners, goes massively into the grass there for good measure. Letting the gardeners of Melbourne know that he is here to cut some grass and help out. What a hero. This Ferrari duo looks very menacing as well. CRF and Groen obviously finishing in the podium, both these drivers in last race. P2, P3 respectively. They'll be looking for a very interesting start as we see, I believe, the McLaren of Abmo spinning out over there. So definitely drivers trying to warm up their tires, doing some burnouts, losing the rears. Nothing uncommon. And as the mighty chump begins to line up and Luke gets disqualified, we're just about all set here to go at Melbourne. So there are the lights, 3, 4, 5 lights. It's lights out and away we go, and we don't have the best camera angle for the start, so I'll just go on board with somebody else. We can see the Naked Champ meanwhile gets a very nice launch going down the inside of MBMA, and we can see a bunch of drivers cluttering up together. Turn 1, who will come out on top? And there's a bunch of drivers go onto the grass, the MBMA being one of them. The Naked Champ meanwhile still fighting for that second place. MBMA dropping down massively, and we can see the Naked Champ, Groen, and Bonk actually managing to push himself very nicely up, going into P3. CRF, meanwhile, in the Ferrari in P4 gets overtaken by Owen. Meanwhile, he's trying to fight back, going side by side with the car. There's not too much space over here. A little bit of contact allows the Alfa Romeo of Trems to get all involved in this situation as well. No drivers seem to have too much damage. There may be some at the back of the grid. However, we still have a lot of action in store here in the first part of this race. I'm not going to lie, some of these camera angles here at Melbourne are not great. Ooh, as there seemed to be a bit of contact between Luke and Parker there. Not too sure what happened. As we can see, a bunch of drivers trying to move up their positions as well. So, after what was a pretty chaotic turn 1, we can see the Naked Champ keeping himself actually moving himself up into P1, Groen in the Ferrari, promoting himself up into P2. Meanwhile, Vidor pushing himself up into P3, Owen in the McLaren in P4, Trems in P5, CRF and MBMA, who was in the lead of this, who did set pole position, drops down to P7. And he won't be very happy about that. And as drivers come across the line for the first time in this race, we'll be keeping an eye out to see if anybody is going to be going into the pits. Naked Champ obviously setting the fastest time of this race with a 1:44, but that is also because that is the first lap of this race. Already making a bit of a gap to Groen as well. 1 second is almost the gap. We'll go down a bit. Ross seems to be making a move, or was about to be interested in a move on Major. Parker right behind him will be looking for any mistake to capitalize on. And capitalize, it does not seem like he could. Parker went very, very wide there off the curb. And actually, Ross manages to go down around the outside of Major, making the move done before the next corner. Major, meanwhile, keeping right closely behind with him. Parker, meanwhile, also getting involved. As we can see, a bit of a train beginning to form. Oh, and as we can see, the Alfa Romeo of Luke actually go into the wall there. No front wing for him anymore. And as we managed, and while we were looking at that incident, we see that Parker manages to get past Major as well. So a bunch of drivers still trying to come to terms with the grip that they have, and we have a virtual safety car? I'm not entirely too sure. I don't see a safety car on track, so I believe that is a VSC. Yes, it is. Making all the drivers slow down significantly. Obviously, there's no overtaking under the VSC, so drivers will have to just patiently stick behind each other. And now that we have a VSC and given a chance to breathe, MBMA actually darting in for the pits. It'll be interesting to see what happened to him. Maybe there was a wing damage, or maybe he's opting for a different set of tires. We'll have to see. And as a matter of fact, MBMA comes into the pits and switches onto the Inters, becoming the first driver to hop onto the Inter tires. VSC still active, so probably smart, unless obviously if the track is still too wet, Inters will definitely be the wrong choice. As well as the Naked Champ speeding under the safety car, managed to get himself a penalty. And as the VSC ends, drivers now go underway, start to race once again. Growing all of a sudden very, very close behind Naked Champ after that safe VSC restart. Oh, as the Naked Champ getting all squirrely, maybe not having enough tire temps in his car. We can see Groen in the Ferrari desperately trying to make a move, going down the inside towards the chicane. Nothing doing yet. Decides to back off, realizing that there's not enough room for two cars there, thinking that he'll get him back on the next moment. Meanwhile, this gives Vitor in the AlphaTauri a chance to make a move on him, possibly. We can see an overtake in the back with Trems and Owen. Trems, meanwhile, trying to go around the outside of Owen, gets the move done very, very nicely, and pushes himself up into P4. Meanwhile, Groen in the Ferrari desperately trying to take the lead of this race by overtaking the Naked Champ, who has gotten himself a penalty. Meanwhile, the Naked Champ darts into the pits, making your race leader Groen, and Vitor right behind, trying to move himself up as well. Trem sets the fastest time of this race. We'll keep an eye on MBMA and see how fast he's gaining on Tichy as well, to get a rough estimate as to what's going on. There's a bunch of drivers now deciding to come into the pits. Actually, the Naked Champ, I'm not too sure what happened there. Maybe he had a miscommunication moment with his driver, Oh, as Admiral goes straight into the wall and retires, and that brings out the safety car? Yep, full-fledged safety car. And all of a sudden, things change dramatically. As I was telling Owen as well, that you may come into this race, or any race, with a strategy in mind. Safety cars, VSCs will change everything around, and it all becomes a quick deciding moment. Now then, Admo unfortunately spinning out and DNFing brings out the safety car. And now that we have a full-fledged safety car, we can review a bit of the standings, a bit of the positioning. So MBMA currently, who was your pole position holder, manages to move himself down into P11. However, he is the only car on the set of Inters. We're still waiting to see if that is the better decision to make. The Naked Champ went into the pits. Oh, he had a drive-through penalty, didn't he? Oh, that makes sense. So now the Naked Champ has cleared up his penalty, and will be looking to make some moves up the grid. Groen, on the other hand, in the Ferrari has been very patient with his overtakes and now is currently your race leader. Vitor in the AlphaTauri currently sitting in P2, and Trems in the Alfa Romeo, actually, who was P3, going into the pits, followed by Owen as well. CRF as well. So a bunch of drivers now deciding to go into the pits. We'll have to see what tires these drivers switch onto. Will he be moving on to the Inters? Yes, he will. So a bunch of drivers now feeling that the Inters are the correct tires to be on as Groen catches up to the safety car. What will this mean for this race? And all of a sudden we have a few change arounds now. A bunch of drivers moving on to the intermediate tires. CRF, unfortunately, looking like he had some miscommunication with his race engineer. And now we'll be starting off on fresh wets. It will not be ideal for him. We'll have to keep an eye out on Groen, Vitor, and the Naked Champ to see if these drivers decide to go in for the pits as well. Maybe if they feel like the wets are also also the wrong tire compound to be on, then we can expect to see them go in as well. If they don't, and track does begin to dry up, then we will be seeing them getting swallowed by the rest of the grid as well. Pointers as well being one of the drivers in the top 5 who's also on his old set of wets. A bunch of change arounds as well. Ross going down into P11, of course. And Owen very comfortably sitting in P6 on his Inters as well. We'll be very happy with the situation he's in. Now then, as we keep an eye on these top 3, it's time to make a decision. Will these drivers be going into the pits under the safety car? Do they maybe feel it's too late? Would they rather wait for another VSC to make that decision? And by the looks of it, Groen decides not to go into the pits, and neither does Vitor or the Naked Champ. So these drivers definitely feeling that they would most definitely lose positions if they go into the pits now, deciding to stay out. And maybe after the safety car goes and the race gets underway, they can maybe form a little bit of a gap and maybe give themselves a better chance of not losing out on so many positions. As we can see, CRF now goes on into the pits, and after some successful communication with his race engineer, manages to fit on the correct compound of tires. Pointer still opting to stay out on the wets as well. And all of a sudden, we have a majority of drivers now on the intermediate. So Trems currently leading the intermediate drivers, sitting in P4, followed by MBMA and Major, and that would be your top 3 drivers on intermediates. But if we were to go into the top 3 of the race, then that's obviously Groen, Vitor, and the Naked Champ. Decisions. It's only lap 6 of 29 here, and we've already got some mind games going on here at Melbourne. Rigo did tell us that there is only 30 minutes of rain. So sooner or later these clouds will clear up and drivers will be getting a more drier track, which means obviously DRS zones being enabled and more pit strategies coming along. I really like this camera angle of the chicane as well. I'm still spectating Trems according to the game, but they showed me that section of the track for like a good majority of it. This is what I was talking about with camera angles not being exactly the greatest here at Melbourne, but we make do. Safety car maybe opting to stay out in another lap. Yep, definitely. So safety car will be most likely coming in at the end of the next lap. And we will get underway here shortly. So, according to Reaper, he did predict 4 safety cars. We are 1 of 4 here. So what does Groen have in mind here? Obviously, we saw earlier that lap 14 to 19 is the pit window for these wets. But obviously, I'm sure he knows it as well, that by the time he gets to lap 14, the track will probably be way too dry for wets anyways. Maybe he's hoping to form a little bit of a gap, then pray for another safety car, which honestly could very much happen with how much these cars are slipping off and going into the wall. We've already seen a bunch of cars that didn't retire but just spin out naturally, so it would be no surprise to me if some drivers can't seem to keep it on track. We'll keep an eye on these drivers going forward. Meanwhile, let's bring our attention a bit down the grid as race control gives us the update that safety car will be coming in at the end of this lap. So going down the rest of the grid, O'Leary and Major in the Red Bulls, currently sitting P7 and P9. They'd obviously be looking to definitely get some points after their race finishes. Tichy and the Aston Martin actually separating those two with a Aston Martin Red Bull sandwich. And as safety car actually comes in at this lap, at the end of this lap, let's keep an eye on Groen, who will now be beginning to back up the rest of the grid. Obviously, no, there will be no overtaking until the race leader crosses the line. So we'll keep an eye on him and see when Groen decides to go, trying to catch the rest of the grid off guard so you can get a bit of a jump on them. Coming through the slow chicane, nothing going yet, still warming up his tires by the looks of it. Has Groen decided to go? He has decided to go, and that has caught Vitor a bit out of pocket, lost for words over here. Vitor unfortunately was not too fast to jump the gun on him, unfortunately. But we can see a bunch of drivers now getting underway here. No slippages yet. We'll keep an eye on Trems as well, who is the intermediate driver right behind the Naked Champ, to see how fast he gains. And he's actually gaining rapidly on the Naked Champ, but no overtakes going in yet. Trems will be looking to definitely get past, but we see on the other hand Pointers around the outside, and the Williams trying to make the move stick, goes around the inside now into that corner and manages to actually make the move on Trems. So the intermediate runner getting overtaken by the wet runner there, still maybe a bit too wet for Inters. MBMA after his race start has managed to pull himself up into P6 as well. We can keep an eye on the Cunning Firm, who will be making a dive down the inside of Major as well. So the Alpine also making its moves on the intermediates as well. Cunning still on the wet compound of tire. Oh, has there been an incident up ahead? And it has. The Naked Champ has gone off into the grass. So we're not too sure what happened there. He probably just lost the car and ended up going onto that grass. Obviously that chicane catches people out in the dries, let alone the wets. It's very unfortunate for him. Meanwhile, Cunning Firm makes a move on MBMA as well. So by the looks of the situation at the moment, it definitely seems like the Inters are not the right tire to be on. Groen setting the fastest time of this race with a 1:35 on the wets. But going back to what I was saying, the wets definitely seem to be the faster compound of tires. We can see the Naked Champ making his move on MBMA, going down the inside before the turn even begins, making his move stick very nicely and moving himself back into P6 after his earlier incident. So maybe Inters were the wrong tire to go on. Obviously, as the conditions change and the track dries up, they will probably come in handy to them, but until then, we're seeing a bunch of drivers struggle. As Vitor actually currently 5/10 behind Groen, so the AlphaTauri and the Ferrari definitely going at each other. Vitor obviously trying to make his teammate Benny proud, as Benny sits at home and probably watches. Vitor would want to make his teammate happy as well, securing extra points. See a bunch of overtakes going on over here as FX and Parker also manages to get past MBMA. Ross in P13 also managing to move himself up. Oh, is there a lot of cars over here? Okay, so nothing going yet, as a bunch of intermediate runners are struggling as well. Owen, meanwhile, trying to make his move on CRF, who did start pretty high up on the grid. However, after different changes and different conditions, he's obviously downplayed. He's obviously moved down. Ooh, as there was a bit of collision, I believe, there from Owen and CRF. Owen obviously not making any moves past him as yet, as Vitor sets the fastest lap of the race with a 1:35. The Red Bull of Major now also trying to move himself up from P9. MBMA is the next car that he sees, and as I say that, Major goes straight into the wall and has to retire. And with that, we bring out another safety car. And if things go according to plan, this may be just what Groen was needing. Very unfortunate there for Major as he comes across that last chicane and goes straight into the wall there and loses his front right tire. However, what will this mean for our race leaders? The Ferrari, the AlphaTauri, and the Williams will have to make a decision now. Obviously, Vitor and Groen managing to secure quite a bit of a gap, almost a 13-second gap to P3. If there is any time to pit, it would be now. Stay riding on board with them and see what decision they have to make, as we have the second safety car of this race. And it's only lap 10. 19 laps left after this as well. Now then, Groen, what will you do? Decides to go into the pits. Vitor, on the other hand, decides to stay out, opting to stay on the wet compounded tire, as Groen having to slow down massively. I'm not too sure why. Maybe because he didn't want to speed under the safety car. Pointers also opting to stay out. Cunning Fern opting to stay out, and the Naked Champ also opting to stay out. So Groen being the only Ferrari at the moment that decided to come into the pits and actually puts on a fresh set of wets, not even intermediates. Interesting. So that obviously moves Groen down into P6 at the moment and promoting Vitor to become your race leader. Vitor currently sitting in P1. Meanwhile, Pointer's sitting in P2 and Trems on the intermediate sitting in P3. So if some people still have some confusion about what the tire to be on, I think positions say enough as it is that out of your top 6, 5 drivers are all on the wet tires. Other than Trems, of course, who is on the intermediates and is definitely finding some sort of grip there. However, I believe he was in P3 and he was 12 seconds behind. So we'll have to see what happens here. Going back to the move Groen made, we've seen him make some interesting moves before. Obviously, we saw a very, very nice pit stop strategy from him at Brazil. Maybe he has something up his sleeve. Maybe he sees something that the other drivers don't. Fresh wets may be the optimal tire to go for, assuming that the race goes long enough in the wets. However, the intermediate runners, none of the intermediate runners deciding to come back onto the wets either. So, a lot of drivers believing that their decision is the correct one. MBMA currently on the oldest set of intermediates as well. Currently 8 lap old. Did start off on pole position, however, did drop down as well. It'll be interesting to see if there are any incidents reported from turn 1 as well. But as we get through the early stages of lap 12, this will be our second safety car race, and if you are just tuning in, we are 2 safety cars, 1 VSC into this race, and we are not even halfway through. It's been a bit of action. MBMA started off on pole position, however, now he currently sits in P8. Groen and CRF in the Ferraris also having a very, very nice qualifying position start. However, now they're moving down the grid and now sitting in P6 and P9. Vitor a very, very promising driver. Was told to me earlier during qualifying that he did win the Constructors' Championship. Currently showing us why. Sitting in P1, Pointers in the Williams sitting in P2, and Trems in the Alfa Romeo sitting in P3. And as we get the notification from race control that the safety car will be coming in this lap, meaning that Vitor will have to now back up the rest of the grid. You can see a bunch of traffic there, and oh, the McLaren of Owen going straight into the back of the Ferrari as well, losing his front wing. Not too sure what happened there. Maybe just wasn't expecting maybe not expecting the Ferrari to brake as soon as he did. However, that will cost him. But our attention goes back into P1. Vitor will obviously be looking to catch Pointers and Trems off guard so he can make a good push. Maybe get a bit of a jump on them for the race start. We'll have to keep an eye out and see when he decides to go. And by the looks of it, I believe he has decided to go. Very squirrely through that last section there as Pointers now tries to keep up. And Vitor has now decided to go, and the race is now back underway. Let's hope for some more clean racing without any sort of more safety car incidents. Growing in the Ferrari. Oh, has some contact with the naked champ up ahead, who was having a battle with the Cunning Fern. What does this mean for Groen? Obviously, with wing damage, he's going to lose a ton of downforce, and here in the rain, obviously, that will not be helping him whatsoever. Parker, on the other hand, right behind Groen, maybe trying to make a move over there. Meanwhile, Groen doesn't seem like he's lost out on too much, going towards the outside, or actually going down the inside, however, nothing doing yet, decides to back off. As we have some very, very tight and very close-knit racing going on over here. FX and Parker, meanwhile, trying to make a move down the inside of Groen. Groen seemingly having the higher top speed. Does not let that move happen. The drivers are now beginning to go through the chicane as well. Nobody into the grass as of yet. Everyone keeping it relatively stable. Ooh, as Parker actually goes massively onto the grass there. Also has a penalty. MBMA managing to make an overtake on CRF as well. Oh, Groen decided to do. Will he go into the pits? He does have that wing damage. We can see it right there. And he does decide to go into the pits. So that's very unfortunate for Groen. However, what does this mean for the rest of the grid? Parker and Cunning Fern in the Alpine sitting in P6, P5 respectively. FX and Parker actually on the intermediates while his teammates running the wets. Ooh, a bunch of overtakes. CRF now trying to get past MBMA, who made the overtake on him earlier. MBMA trying to get the switch back on him. No move done yet. As CRF now gets back into P7, as we can see Luke in the Alfa Romeo getting very interested with MBMA as well. Thought about going down the inside, but decided to back off. Maybe feeling like he just is not close enough to make the move just as yet. As we go up as well, if we can see Parker getting very, very close to his teammate as well. We've seen Parker struggle sometimes with wheel-to-wheel racing, but actually gets let through by his teammate. I'm not too sure if that was team orders there, but he still goes onto the grass. Parker maybe needing a bit of a talk to, explaining where track limits are exactly. As he goes onto the grass once again. The Naked Champ, meanwhile, sitting in P4 on the wets as well. And it looks like these intermediates have had like some sort of second life breath breathe right into them. Intermediate tires currently trying to make a dent to what has been a stronger wet tire compound here. As we ride on board with Parker as he approaches the Mercedes. Will he make a move dive down the inside? Sets the fastest lap of the race actually with a 1:34.8. However, does not make a move into turn 1. However, going down the second DRS zone, maybe feeling like he has a bit of a better run. Goes around the outside, but does not make the move stick. The Mercedes keeping that position very nicely, but Parker actually making the switch around. Goes around the outside, goes very, very wide off the curb and off the track, but does make the move stick. We'll have to see if that gets reported or if he gets a penalty for that for track limits. However, Parker moves himself up into P4 at the moment. Meanwhile, Trems almost a 10th behind Pointers. Intermediates definitely coming into play over here. This is what we were talking about on the new revamped part of the circuit. A lot longer of a flat-out section, and he manages to make the move, pushing himself up into P2 and Pointers into P3. So these intermediates definitely being the tires that they want to be on at this current moment. And Vitor in the AlphaTauri, currently still on the wets, is your race leader as well. We'll be having an eye on him to see when he pits. It's lap 14. Normally cars come into pit at this time, and there it is. Just as we were saying, Vitor decides to come into the pits and move potentially onto the intermediate tires, which now promotes Trems J as your race leader in the Alfa Romeo. FXN Parker now currently sitting in P2 at the moment. And I believe the Cunning Fern sitting in P3. Cunning actually deciding not to pit. The Naked Champ getting another 5-second time penalty for speeding under the pit lane. As CRF sets the fastest lap of the race with a 1:34.3. As we have a yellow flag through Sector 3. Not too sure what that was. Seems like everything's under control though. Luckily no more safety cars coming out as of yet. Ross actually getting himself up into P7 as well after the pit stops from the drivers up ahead. Keep an eye on him as he's very closely followed behind by Vitor as well, who is on the fresher intermediate tires. Can't make the move just yet. Does not obviously want to damage his race. It's so easy to lose the car here as well. So as we ride on board with Vitor as he goes around the outs, or tries to go around the outside of Ross. Can't make that move stick. I believe he's going to be a bit too far back to make a lunge on into the chicane section over there, the fast chicane, but maybe hoping for a mistake from Ross to capitalize on it. And by the looks of it, ooh, thought about going down the inside, but Ross manages to close the door on him, does not let him through. This will definitely be annoying Vitor. As the longer he stays behind Ross, the more he will struggle. Cunning, meanwhile, being the only wet runner, finally decides to come into the pits and moves himself up and moves himself onto the intermediate tires as well. Vitor, meanwhile, gets a very nice run on Ross. Ross probably going to have to defend from the outside. We'll have to see how this goes. Brakes later and manages to make the move. Actually, manages to keep his position. Ross, beautiful defending there. However, that may compromise him for the second DRS zone, where Vitor looks more than hungry to make another lunge down the inside. However, Ross once again braking later. Ooh, gets a bit of a love tap from behind there. Thankfully, does not lose his car as well. FXN Parker, meanwhile, on an absolute tear. Currently almost about to overtake Trems, as a matter of fact. Trying to go around the outside, but can't make the move just yet as they approach the fast chicane. We'll ride on board with these two for a bit. Oh, as Trems seems to have made a mistake. And that promotes FXN Parker into P1. Trems now dropping down into P2. CRF in P3. So Parker definitely saw a mistake and capitalized on it as SietseBoum now retires from this race. Oh, and that's another broken wheel, and that means another safety car. Safety car numero 3, I think. I don't speak Spanish, but I'm guessing that's it. And as Parker and Trems actually both deciding to come into the pits. So what will our race leaders be deciding to do here? CRF P3 at the moment on 11 lap old inters. Actually, both these drivers opting to go onto the fresher set of inters. So P1 to P3 and P4 all going onto inters. MBMA on 14 lap old intermediates now takes... will he take the lead of the race? No, he will not. Would have wanted to, but unfortunately cannot. Trems now leads the race with MBMA in P2. Parker, I believe, was serving one of his time penalties as well, which is why he's not been able to come out ahead of Trems. CRF on the mediums. I am all for drivers making risky moves and risky pit stops. When drivers are out here pitting for fresh intermediates, you've gone on and put on fresh, dry compound of tires. That too being the only driver on fresh compounded tires would. But like I always have said, these drivers know the track better than anybody else. As a commentator, I can only explain what I see. However, these drivers, obviously driving these cars, know what the track feels like. So maybe CRF just sees something that we don't. Keep an eye on him and see how he progresses as the race goes on, as Ross now manages to get himself up all the way into P3 as well. So Ross would be very, very happy with this after retiring early in qualifying, saving those extra set of tires that he has. Hoping that he might have to use them, but currently lap 18 right now, and only now has the track begun to somewhat dry up. Only allowing for these inters to just now kick into gear. You can see the mighty chump currently 41 seconds behind the rest of the grid, as he will be trying to catch up as well. And with how many changes for the lead of this race it has been, I'm actually interested to see, because I feel like the most laps led around this track so far is by the safety car. We've seen MBMA in the lead, we've seen Trems in the lead, we've seen Parker in the lead, we've seen Groen in the lead. As the Naked Champ comes into the pits, 2-lap old intermediates. What is he going to be going on? Actually serving a time penalty by the looks of it. And putting on another set of fresh inters. So, lap 19 of 29, roughly 10 laps left to go here at Melbourne. We've had 3 safety cars, 1 VSC, and I believe almost 4 or more than 4 race leaders. MBMA and Ross being the drivers on the oldest set of mediums with 16-lap old and 12-lap old intermediates respectively. They probably will decide not to pit right now. We'll probably be trying to pull off a stunt like Groen did, where the safety car gets underway and these drivers will be then looking to maybe push for a little bit of a gap, rely on mistakes from the drivers behind them, and then if there is another safety car, which God forbid there is, they're probably then going to decide to make their pit stops. We've had 5 retirements from this session, with Tichy Major, Abmo, and Noof all retiring. I don't believe safety cars coming in at the end of this lap either. So we will definitely be having another lap under the safety car. Trem sitting in the most ideal position right now out of all the drivers. Currently on 1 lap old intermediates and leading this race, followed by 2 drivers sitting in P2 and P3 who are on an older set of intermediates. This is more than the ideal situation for him at the moment. I do want to spectate CRF, as a matter of fact, right on board with him for a little bit. Currently being the only driver on the mediums, has decided not to actually pit at all, sticking to his decision, so credit where credit is due. But I do wish to see how grip is looking for him, so he looks to be keeping it relatively smooth so far. But as the race gets underway, we'll have to see how he deals with cars around him and also these turns at high speeds. As we're a bit around halfway through lap 20. Safety car will most likely be coming in at the end of this lap, as the Mighty Chump has now actually managed to catch up to the rest of the grid as well. And as I say that, race control has also given us the update that yes, the safety car will be coming in at the end of this lap. So what that means is Trems will now be once again backing up the rest of the grid. Go on board with CR and look behind him. Not too sure what you wanted to see here, Reaper. If there's no spray... Well, by the looks of it, there doesn't seem to be any spray. Obviously, there are leaving dry lines on the track, so... By the looks of it, maybe he's in good condition. So yeah, I guess that would be a way to check if these drivers are on the right sets of tires or not. However, as we get underway here with Trems, he does manage to catch MBMA and Ross off guard. Ross, meanwhile, trying to make a move on MBMA, but Vitor from the back also getting very interested as well. And he dives down the... and he dives nothing as yet. Drivers being very, very calm with their overtakes. If we look a bit down. CRF trying to fight with FX and Parker. Actually gets overtaken by his teammate Groen. Meanwhile, Vitor right behind Ross, who is on the older set, and CRF is spun out. No, CRF is not spun out. CRF is just majorly dropping. What happened to his wing? Oh, he has no... Oh, he does have... I'm not too sure. Seems like there was some sort of incident involved there at the back. As Luke manages to get past pointers as well, going into the grass there a bit, but... So... Meanwhile, Vitor, on the other hand, very, very closely following behind Ross. Actually manages to get passed by Parker as well, who caught him napping almost. Parker promotes himself up into P4. Ross staying in P3 at the moment. Trems getting actually a very, very nice jump on MBMA and has created almost a 3.9 second gap already within the span of one lap. Goes to show you how much faster those fresh enters are. And we've got a train here from P2 all the way down into P6. All these drivers fighting for the podium positions. Closest battle on track seems to be between Parker and Ross. Actually, Parker making a dive down the inside, manages to make the move on Ross, compromising him a bit, allowing Vitor to also get through, and that also allows Groen now to become very interested in this overtake. So in the span of almost 2 corners, Ross has dropped down nearly 3 positions. And with the span of 2 chicanes, Ross manages to drop down almost 3-4 positions, going down into P6. Parker, Vitor, and Groen now moved up into P3, P4, and P5 respectively. And now Parker getting very interested in MBMA, as we can see a bunch of cars coming together near the back, right behind them as well. Parker going down the inside, making his move on MBMA as well. As we can see, Vitor fighting with Groen for P4 as well. Going into the fast chicane, Vitor decides to back out of it, thinking better of it, maybe going to be able to make a move over here. Looks to be the case. Vitor going towards the inside, but still too far back, decides to back out of that move and let Groen keep P4 for the moment. And as I say that, Groen is now trying to make a move on MBMA. We had a few safety cars here, and all of a sudden MBMA now coming into the pits, deciding 19 laps is too long for the intermediates. And with that, your current top 3 are Trems, Parker, and Groen. However, that could quite possibly all change. Vitor right behind him in the AlphaTauri, currently in P4, going to be looking for the final step of the podium right now. MBMA and Ross actually putting on the dry compound of tires, both willing to put on the soft compounds. Maybe feeling the track is too dry now. And if that is the correct decision to make, then we could be looking forward to a lot of more overtakes now. CRF getting a 3-second time penalty as well, possibly for track invalidations. The Naked Champ also getting a 3-second time penalty. And this battle between the AlphaTauri and the Ferrari continues, Trems managed to push himself up all the way 6 seconds up. We'll have to keep an eye on him and see if he decides to go into the pits. But meanwhile, Groen and Vitor, ooh, that was a bit buggy. Groen manages to keep his position, goes very, very wide, actually comes into collision with Vitor and loses a bit of his wing. And now Vitor in the AlphaTauri has been moved up into P3. Groen will most likely be coming in the pits, trying to maybe change his tires, and as Trems has the fastest lap time of the race, Parker, Vitor, and Groen all come in to put on the dry compounded tires. What will this mean for MBMA and Ross as all the drivers up ahead come into the pits to move on to the dry compounded tires? There will obviously be drivers who will probably stack up with each other, get held up. What does this mean? Was this the right decision to make? As they are beginning to jump up a whole load of positions, MBMA and Ross coming out P4 and P5, with Vitor being the only car ahead of them on the dry compounded tires. The Mighty Chump and Trems being the only drivers on the intermediates as well. And as the track has completely dried up, what will happen here? Trems will need to absolutely come in at the end of this lap. He cannot afford to stay out another lap on these intermediates. Ross very, very closely behind MBMA. As you can see, Vitor and both AlphaTauris now going at each other. Mighty Chump obviously on the intermediate tires should make it easy for his teammate and get out of the way. Looked like he was putting up a bit more fight there than usual, but if there's anywhere to put up a fight, it is now, so he can hold up MBMA and give his teammate a bit of a breathing room. As we can see, Trems now comes into the pits. Ross, meanwhile, also making a move on. Oh, has there been a big collision going on over here involving MBMA and the AlphaTauri of Mighty Chump? Big, big collision over there, and we have a fourth safety car. Oh my goodness. Back and forth, back and forth. Here we go once again. Oh, poor MBMA. My heart goes out to him. The man made the perfect strategy call and comfortably moved himself up into the grid to give himself a fighting chance. And because of that incident, he has to now retire. And with the fourth safety car of this race, lap 25 of 29, we will only be looking for maybe one more. We will only be having 1 or 2 more laps of racing. Credit to Reaper, he guessed it right on the money. 4 safety cars this race. And with time winding down, Trems leads this race with Vitor right behind him and Ross sitting in P3. Parker in P4 with a penalty. We'll actually take a look. He waited the entire race for the dry, shaking my head last time I watched him. That is so unfortunate for MBMA. My heart goes out to the man. He had everything down right, but unfortunately, that collision cost him everything. My AI is in the points, says Owen. Is he actually? Yeah, P9 at the moment. Very nice. Oh, Kill Me Man was so perfect with the strategy. MBMA, my heart goes out to you, brother. I cannot imagine what you must be going through right now. That is heartbreaking. However, we can't take away from what you did. MBMA and Ross both having the optimal strategy for this race. Ross, meanwhile, not crashing out, moving himself up into P3. With only a few laps left to go in this race, it is either now or never for a lot of these drivers. Mighty Chump currently still on the intermediates, and I'm not too sure why. Currently the only driver on the intermediates. As we take a look at penalties as well. So, looking at penalties, Parker with a 6-second time penalty, sitting in P4 at the moment, will need to make some serious time up to P5 if he wants to keep that position. Looking down the rest of the grid, CRF in P11 with 3 seconds, the Mighty Chump in P12 with 5, and the Naked Champ in P13 with 3. What a crazy race this has been. We've had more than 3-4 race leaders throughout the entire stint of this race. We've had heartbreak. We've had too many safety cars. And it all comes down to what should be these last 3 laps. Lap 26 to 29. I'm not too sure if I missed the notification there from race control, but it seems to be that the safety car will be coming in at the end of this lap, which only means 3 laps left to go, and it all comes into the hands of Trems. How will he be able to hold up the rest of the grid? He's going to need a perfect launch. Parker has been seemingly looking to make tons of moves. Ross, with his perfect strategy, has been on fire. Vitor, with his patient moves and his patient overtaking, has managed to move himself up into P2. Every driver here has a chance to win this race, so let's see how these final few laps go. As the safety car enters the pit lane, when will Trems decide to go? We've seen a tendency for most of these drivers to go during this turn, and it doesn't seem to be any drift different this time around. Trems, full throttle, is going down the straight, has not really caught Vitor off guard. Ross, meanwhile, seemingly caught a bit napping. As we begin these final 3 laps and we look down the rest of the grid, we can see Parker making a move on, trying to make a move on Ross. Groen, meanwhile, moving himself up into P5 after the incidents he's had. Pointer's currently sitting in P7. Owen managing to make the move on O'Leary as well. Looking back up the grid, we can see Vitor is almost 2 tenths behind Trems as well, fighting for the lead of this race. That's a purple sector 1. And Parker actually managing to get past Ross, and that makes Groen all interested in the Haas as well. How will Ross defend from both drivers at the same time? Going around the outside is the Ferrari, managing to maintain the inside line for this fast right-hander. And there's now the 3 cars going wide into the chicane. They will not fit. We all know that. Side by side, the Ferrari and the Haas go, and there's contact. Ross goes off into the grass, promoting Groen into P4. Ross will not be happy about that whatsoever. Meanwhile, Parker currently sitting in P3, definitely has penalties. Vitor, on the other hand, in P2, also having penalties. And Ross will be very, very, very furious about that incident. Will definitely be looking to report that in the steward's office. However, there is still a race that we have to keep an eye on over here. Pointer's trying to make a move on Luke. A bit too far back on this occasion. As we look up, Vitor, meanwhile, very, very close behind Trems. Obviously has his penalty, would want to make the move as soon as possible. Goes around the inside and comes into collision with Trems! There is a collision between the race leader and P2. Trems dropping down the rest of the grid. Vitor now moving himself up into P1. Oh no, Vitor, what have you done? Oh, he will not be happy. So now both P1 and P2 are sitting with penalties. Groen in P3 having no penalties as of yet. Luke currently sitting P4 and Pointers in P5. What is happening here at Australia? Owen 2 tenths behind Pointers now. His AI is racing the drivers. What is happening here? Going down a bit more of the grid, CRF chasing behind Trems as well, who was leading this race. Trems will be absolutely furious with Vitor. Meanwhile, CRF going around the outside, trying to make the move stick. Yes, he does. Goes very, very off the grass, actually. Goes into the curbs there and into the gravel. So can't make the move completely happen. Letting Trems keep P7 at the moment. Owen's AI currently fighting for P5. Oh, my heart goes out to Trems so much. I can't believe what's happening here. With 1 lap left to go, let's quickly take a look at penalties. I don't think the tires really matter anymore. So FX and Parker currently with a 6-second time penalty. Both Luke and Groen currently would probably finish within that time frame if, assuming Parker cannot create too much of a gap. Actually, never mind. And now Groen gets a 3-second penalty. What is happening? This race is all over the place. Pointer is now currently 8 tenths behind Luke. CRF manages to get past the AI of Owen as well. We're right on board with Vitor as he comes across the line. Obviously, he's had a fantastic race, but however, with his 3 seconds of time penalties, we'll have to see how this fares for him. CRF actually getting overtaken by Trems, who was the race leader of this race. Let me just remind everybody. But as lap 29 of 29 ends, Vitor comes across the line, finishes P1, FX and Parker finishes P2, and Groen will probably finish P3. But what does this mean for podium positions as the other drivers now try to finish across the line? Luke finishes P4, and with that, Vitor, Parker, and Groen will be finishing your podium here today. What a race! Oh my goodness! I'm gonna need to take a breather after that one. Wow! So Ross getting taken out, Trems getting taken out, so many of these drivers will be so upset. I can imagine a lot of stewards reports after this one, but regardless, with how things have finished at the moment, we have to give credit where credit is due. The AlphaTauri put on a fantastic showing here today. Obviously, incidents left and right, however, you can't take away from what was an otherwise pretty great race from him. So big congratulations to the AlphaTauri driver finishing first. Vitor did a fantastic job. Parker in the Alpine finishing in P2, and Groen in the Ferrari finishing in P3 after he had a circus show of a race. Luke in P4, Pointers in P5, Trems in P6, Owen in P7, Cunningfern in P8, CRF in P9, and O'Leary in P10. Whew. And we will have a lot of stewards reports after this one. I'm going to try to get some of these drivers in for an interview, and we will get a take on what has happened. If everyone could just stay with me for just a few seconds as we try to get some of these drivers in for interviews as well. Groen, congratulations! Third time I'm talking to you, man. Should start like me giving. Yeah, I should start giving. Maybe you should just start doing commentary with me with how often I've been talking to you. But congratulations on what was a fantastic podium. What a crazy race! Talk to me. What happened?
A lot happened. I got damaged. I don't know what left, but my front wing broke, so I needed to pit. And the strategies, man, all over the place. Wets, inters, then softs, but they were used softs, so the last few laps were really hard. Oh, but we made it pull through.
Man, yeah, no kidding. The wet stint was as much of a mess as it was. You qualified pretty high up, and then wing damage after wing damage, you kept dropping down lower and lower. I was worried for you. I was thinking to myself, like, I was expecting to see you in the podium because of the recent performances you've been on, but Wow. Congratulations, man.
Yes, thank you. Still managed to pull through, man.
Yeah, congrats on that one. Vitor, okay, I'm going to be very honest with you. I have not been able to pronounce your name either for the entirety of the race. Could you run me through that? Is it Vitor, Vidor?
Yeah, it's in Brazil we call Peter, right? So yeah, Peter. Yeah.
Okay, well, I gave up at one point and just started calling you Bonk. But congratulations. A bit of an incident there at the end. What happened?
Yeah, yeah, man. I thought he would give me enough room to do the maneuver, you know. But then
Mm,
when I saw he closed the door, I tried to pull away, but then it was too late, you know. I thought he would go more to the outside,
mm,
and because I was so fast in the straight, but yeah, I hope that doesn't take my victory away. But
mm.
let's see.
Right, well, you drove a fantastic race overall. Talk me through the wet stint. How was that going for you? Like, did you practice in the wets for before the race or anything at all?
Yeah, yeah, I practiced today. You know, I didn't have enough time in this week because I only knew I would race in this yesterday. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so I practiced a little bit today.
Oh yeah, I forgot you're a reserve driver, aren't you?
Yeah, but now I am a full time. Yeah,
Okay, well, no better way to make a debut race than to win it, isn't it?
yeah, man. Yeah, yeah. I was a racer here in season 8. You know, I was
Mm-hmm.
tier 4 season 8, and
Yeah.
now I'm coming back. Yeah, to
Well,
have some fun.
welcome back, man. I don't think there's a better way to make a better statement than to win the race. Obviously, we'll have to look into the stewards' reports and incidents and see what happens after that, but we can't take away from you what was an overall fantastic race from your end. So, big congratulations on the win as well.
Thank
But,
you, man.
but I'll be bringing my attention now over to Parker. Parker, congratulations. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you, thank you.
How are you feeling? How was the race? Run me
Holy,
through it. A very chaotic race, wasn't it? I saw you were making moves
yeah,
left and right.
it was, it was such a, it was such a chaotic race. I was trying everything I could to just like try to keep my nose clear as much as possible. Obviously, there were some things that I wish could be done better, but I thought it was gonna be over at that restart.
Which one? There were
The
like
end,
four restarts.
the the last restart. I
Ah,
think it
okay.
was I think it was Vogel and Ross went three wide with me through the chicane. How
Yeah.
I didn't die there, I am so confused.
Yeah, no, there was no kidding. When I saw you both go three wide, when I saw all of you guys go three wide, I knew for a fact that there was no way everyone was gonna come out of that unscathed, and lo and behold, nobody did.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I had a terrible exit on the start of that flat out section. Ross was getting the better of me even though I had just overtook him. I was trying to defend a Vogel as much as I could, but
right. Well,
I
incidents happen. I guess that's for the stewards to decide anyways, but can't take away from you again what was overall a fantastic race. I saw the amount of overtakes you were making as well. You drove a great race, man. So big congratulations on your podium as well.
thank you.
But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will be wrapping everything up. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Tier 3. We will be back once again next week. Let me just check what the next race will be. Right, so next race we will be going to Canada. Obviously, a track also very infamous for the rain, but I'm sure drivers will be able to handle it. So, everybody, thank you so much. Take care. Thank you to the drivers for the interviews, and thank you to the rest of the grid for what was overall a fantastic race to watch. So, with that, I hope to see you all later. Thank you all.